Well, I'm going to move on because several people want to go and sit in their gardens with a cold drink tonight before the sun disappears, I'm being told. Item 6 is electoral matters, the vacancy. There are a number of issues that arise from this, and I will just ask the clerk to outline the things that need to happen. I think we're fairly familiar now, having had a few of these recently, but I will ask the clerk to outline things.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A notice will go in the Tavistock Times, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, with regard to the vacancy. That will provide electors of the parish with the opportunity, should they so wish, to call an election via the returning officer at the Borough Council. It would be most helpful to this council if there was an election, because the resignation of Councillor Smith takes us below our necessary threshold for the general power of competence. As you'll appreciate, an awful lot of the work that we're doing is under the general power of competence. So what I would say is, in terms of your interaction with constituents and the communities, if there are people within the North Ward who might be able to come forward, electors who might be able to come forward and request that election, it requires 10 electors to sign a notice, and that will enable the election to take place. If there is an election, we also have asked the question as to whether or not you would wish poll cards to be issued. In the recent past, you have said that's something you would wish to happen, and if that is the case, I'd be grateful if you could indicate that to myself as well.
Okay. On the first part of that, it needs one councillor who lives in the North Ward to walk down his street and get another 9 people, or 10 people I think it is, plus the councillor, to sign up to say that they want an election. It's fairly straightforward, but...
Done it twice before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I think so you and the other people, you want to walk up and down Parkwood Road again?
If you would, please. I think it's just we do need an election. If we were to lose the general power of competence at this stage, and just to make it clear to members, we have to have an election. It doesn't matter whether it's a contested or an uncontested election. As long as we've had an election, we retain our general power of competence, so it can be as it was the last time round. It was an uncontested election. But if that could be done, perhaps liaise with the clerk over dates and times, etc. On poll cards, I think from memory it's about £2,500 it costs us roughly to do that in this particular ward. If you recall, we did use them the last time round because we took a huge amount of criticism from the public on the previous occasion when we didn't use poll cards. People were complaining bitterly that they didn't know there was an election on. So I would strongly recommend from the chair that we do use poll cards again this time, because I don't really want to go through the pain we went through a couple of elections ago.
Yeah, I'll formally propose we use polling cards. One of the reasons is that sometimes we have got off lightly when there have been uncontested elections. We seem to have one uncontested, then the next one 2 or 3 people stand, and then the ones that follow are uncontested again. And again, we had criticism for the polling cards. A lot of people, they may not read the Tavistock Times, and they're not aware, and they're always very upset when they hear about it afterwards. So,
Councillor Sheldon, I can assure you that every adult over the age of about 15 of the 12,000 that live in Tavistock read the Tavistock Times avidly every single week. Never miss. Councillor Johnson, were you about to second that?
I was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those in favour of poll cards then, please show. I think that's unanimous as well. Thank you. So we can move on then. General finance, schedules of payment. Any questions or comments from the members? No? Right. So if we move on to the budget monitoring report, same question to you.
Sorry, on the tenders, if members are just happy to authorise the...
I haven't got to that yet. I'm on budget monitoring, 7B. Calm down. By the time you get home, the sun will be gone down anyway. Yeah. Budget monitoring, any questions or queries on that? No? Item 7C, the tenders. Who wishes to speak? General Manager or Clerk? Clerk. Thank you.
Thanks.
You'll
recall that we've previously authorised going out to tender in relation to the public realm around the Pannier Market. This is to seek your consent for the arrangements for the opening and acceptance of those tenders, please.
Are you all happy with that? Do you need a formal resolution?
Yes, please.
Oh, heavens above. Thank you, Councillor.
I'll formally state that to authorise the opening and acceptance of tenders in respect of the pannier markets around THI public realm scheme by the responsible financial officer in consultation with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor with report to the subsequent meeting of the Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Whitcomb. You're seconding, I take it. Those in favour then please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. So if we move on then to item 8, item 8A, I think Councillor Venning is going to introduce this because of I've been advised that Councillor Ward was not at that particular DM&L, the 17th of April. So Councillor Venning will present, I hope.
Yeah, I would propose that this is the red. I couldn't see anything detrimental in what's written down here, so I formally ask that it's accepted.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Whitcomb, thank you. Those in favour? Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, would you like to introduce item 8B, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A meeting of the Development Management and Licensing Committee took place on the 8th of May, and the minutes are before you, pages 1 to 3, going up to minute number 380. There were no particularly controversial issues on this occasion, and I beg to move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Mrs Whitcomb, thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much, members. Items circulated for information. The General Manager's report enclosed. I had one question on that, which I put to the General Manager before the meeting, which was the repair of the bay window in the Council chamber. It doesn't state when it was going to happen, so I asked the General Manager and he told me 2020.
Oh, reassuring.
This is the one over there. I don't know if there's been an update since the just before the start of the meeting, but
there is a slight update. We've reviewed that timing and we can deliver it within the next 6 weeks. Thank you.
Miracles we can do quite quickly. The impossible takes slightly longer. Anything else on the General Manager's report that anyone wants to raise? You'll note that perhaps I think it probably comes up under Whitchurch Down later on as well, but the gorse cutting's been delayed this year until September because the weather conditions meant that the ground was so bad, getting on it with machinery cutting gorse would have just made one incredible mess. So it was delayed. Councillor Crawford, please.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to send my thanks really for being able to look around the pannier market the other day and to say I can't think of the right word, for the contractors and the good work that they did. Sorry, I can't think of the right word at the moment. But I just wanted to commend it, really. That's what I wanted, I think.
Thank you very much. I think the minutes can show that the councillors are very pleased with the end result.
Excellent.
Certainly contractors have done a very good job. And I happened to notice, was it yesterday, I think I was out in Market Road and just turned and looked back through one of the gateways and you get a really good view of the roof from there, and it really strikes you what a massive difference. I mean, it's the same roof in a way, but it just looks so much better now it's all been sorted out and done, and I think the inside is good as well. Did you wish to comment? You're looking at me sort of with your thumb on the button.
Not quite on that matter, but thank you. I just wanted to mention there is a gym festival which is identified within the Butcher's Hall element on page 1 that has been on Tavistock Parish, indicating it's on the 26th of August. There's been a meeting with Miss Ivy, who is the event organiser for that event, and that will actually be held on the 25th as opposed to 26th of August. In the Butcher's Hall and Guildhall car park.
Thank you for that. I've got a note of that, so it would saves me saying that. That's good. So, if nothing else on the General Manager's report, I'm going to turn over now to the Town Hall Manager's report. Is there any questions anyone wants to raise on that? No? All seems to be going very well, and I have to say, as having gone to some events in there recently, I think the performance of our staff has been above exceptional, frankly. The Civic Ball was, really good, and I think they worked really well and did an extremely good job. And we've been to other events there recently as well, and I think our staff need to be commended on their dedication in their presentation and the way they're helpful. So if we move on to the pannier market report, I did raise a question with the General Manager before the meeting, and I got a sensible answer to this question, and that was the farmers market have been asked to increase their operating hours until 3:30. I did raise the issue as to why it wasn't 1600 as it is for the pannier market traders, but I think this is a situation where we might hope to achieve that at some point in the future, but at the moment they have a habit of packing up at 1 o'clock, so if we can encourage them to stay at least until 3 o'clock, or 3:30 rather, but at some point I think there would be an intention to try and harmonise the times that people are present, because at the moment, with all due respects to them, when they start packing up at 1 o'clock, particularly visitors to the town think the town's shutting up, and it's not actually, because the pannier market's still there. Anything else on the pannier market report, Councillor? I missed the Works Department, have I? I managed to do that then. Oh, right, okay. Works Department, sorry, missed that one. Anything on that well, I did deal with the repair of the bay window under that, didn't I, the Works Department? Yeah. Yep, carry on.
Mr. Mayor. With regard to play parks, I just wanted to make the point that I think Whitchurch Play Park is looking a bit unloved at the moment. Until recently, the grass hadn't been cut. When the grass was cut, all of the grass cuttings were left on the grass. Maybe that's normal practice, but it doesn't look very pretty. But more importantly, there is still a whole heap of logs and roundels stretched along the hedge just behind the goalpost. And I wondered what the plan is to do about that.
The plan of action is to actually remove that this week. Basically, we've had it on our radar. Trees were cut down probably about 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, and with the weather we've had, or weather conditions, we needed to take a vehicle or tractor in there, etc., to actually take all the arisings away, and the ground conditions haven't been sufficient to actually get those kind of vehicles in there without causing too much damage. We're now in a position where we can get vehicles in there to take it away, so we have got it planned in this week.
Okay, was there anything else on the pannier market report? Who are you appointing? Councillor Johnson, please.
Sorry, this is on the Works Department report. Well, connected with the Works Department anyway. I'm very pleased to see that that work is starting on the making the play area in the meadows less muddy, so that looks very encouraging. They seem to be putting an awful lot of gravel down there, so hopefully that will do the trick. So, couple of things. There's a sign by the skate park, and there's a sign by most of the play equipment in the meadows. Could just do with a clean, please. Won't take very long, but it would just improve it and make it look a lot better. Thank you.
Yes, there's the councillor yearbooks on there, and with the cost of £32.45 plus VAT. It is the last item on the report. And it was whether or not we're going to have these this year. Are we still going to have these this year, or do you want to decide?
It will depend entirely on what you decide this evening. We have to do it by consensus rather than by vote, because it wasn't strictly speaking on the agenda, but a consensus of this meeting as to whether you feel it's worth investing 17 times 32.45 plus the VAT on the documents or not, and it's up to members really to make a decision.
Yeah, well, I'll add to that then. I don't think it is worth spending £32.45, but I think it is worth considering a diary, a standard diary, where members can actually add their own notes and put their own meetings in a diary if they wish one to be provided, and it can be provided for far less either an A4 or an A5 diary. So everybody has got a diary from the council that they can have. There'll be no excuses that I put it on a calendar and the cat ate it or something. But basically, it would make it more formal that we did have a council diary and we put our meetings in it, and it makes it far less than having it on notes or however individual councillors keep their appointments. So I am proposing that. Thank you.
Councillor Whitcomb first, then Councillor Squire after that, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The pannier market issue a diary, so which I must admit I have every year. And I do agree that to spend that money on that other book is nonsense. Okay?
Thank you. Councillor Squire, please.
I did with that pannier market diary in my hand, and it's quite sufficient and saves the expense of the other. Yeah.
Right, am I picking up a general sense that people are not supportive of £32.45 plus VAT per councillor for the current thing? Am I picking that up as a general consensus? Because if I am, then the next issue is there a will to do something else? Councillor Sheldon has made a proposal that a diary be provided. I don't know the pannier market diary. I don't know. Is that something that you get given because you sit on the pannier market committee, is it?
Well, I don't know. Yes, I just go and ask for it each year. I've had it for the last 6 years.
Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think a calendar diary probably wouldn't be very good, but like they have in schools, an academic diary, or if there is such a thing as a council diary that goes from May to May, would be quite useful. I've already put the dates, proposed dates of next year up until in my own diary, which cost me I think £1 which I bought in the pannier market, but it only goes up to December, so it would be helpful to have it, to take it through for the whole of the council year. So I don't know if there is such a thing. Is that? No, I'm not having one of those, Mr Mayor.
That goes on forever. Anybody else want to chip in on this? I'm going to look for a seconder first of all, then for Councillor Sheldon's proposal. Is there a seconder that we... Thank you. We have a diary. Sorry?
We don't have.
No. Well, Councillor Sheldon, I think, was suggesting we get rid of the expensive ones. Yes, there's a seconder
we
for
don't
that.
actually buy them. And if we have something like a week to review, A5 diary of a suitable colour.
Can we take this in two chunks then? One, and can I just see a show of hands? Who supports the proposal which Councillor Sheldon's put, Councillor Palfrey has seconded, that we do not have the councillor yearbooks? Who's in favour of that? Getting rid of that? Yep. That's pretty good. Now, Councillor Sheldon, do you want to put a second proposal then that we have a diary of some sort?
That we do have a diary, and to satisfy everyone, I think the pocket diary may not be quite suitable for what people have got in mind. A week to review, A5 diary, which is just twice as large as that, right. A5, which is half of A4. So I'm just trying to put that forward. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If there's a seconder for that, no? All right, Councillor Crawford.
I'm just going to amend it and just say if people request it, because I don't particularly want one, so people do need one.
Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal then? If not, the Councillor, you'll second it, will you? Okay. Members wish to debate it or not? I mean, if it does go through as an approval in a minute, we would need to ask for further work to be done by the officers to establish what the costs might be and bring that back, I think.
I mean, to be honest, I think, Mr Mayor, if we're talking about something such as Councillor Johnson held up, we can get those from, a stationers if members indicate they want it. I can't imagine they're going to be more than £2 or £3 for a document such as that.
Right. So we have a proposal then, which has been duly seconded, that the council provides a diary to councillors if the councillors so request one. There are people such as myself for whom it would be absolutely useless because everything's on my electronic system, so I couldn't deal with it. Is there any debate on that before we put it to the vote? Those in favour of that, then please show. Pretty much. It's clearly carried. Didn't mean to vote in favour, actually. No. Okay, so that's clearly carried, and shall we then agree that we leave that to the officers to sort out and come back? You're going to have to put out a note actually asking, because we've got people who are not here tonight, so I mean, quick show of hands then, in this room tonight, who would want one if there was one? Oh, and Squire? Yes? Right. The rest of us present tonight don't want one, but we would need to inquire of the apologies as to whether they need one or not. Okay, so if we can, is there anything else in the assistance of the town clerk's report? Yeah. There is something that certainly that I need to raise, and that is, or Councillor Ward can raise, which is the planning training, which has been arranged for the 29th of May. This is not just for members of the planning committee. This is for all councillors. You all get involved in planning, you all get involved in discussions and talks with people, and it is actually quite helpful to have some clear understanding of what is and what is not a material planning consideration. I don't know exactly what format the training is going to take, but there are some key things that you do need to be clear about, and particularly when you're talking to members of the public. I don't advocate you give planning advice to members of the public. The only advice I would suggest you give them is that they approach the Borough Council with a view to getting some pre-application advice. But there are things that you can say to them, like, well, actually, the reason that decision was taken was because it was not a material planning consideration. So just because you don't like the colour of something or the shape of it, it's not necessarily a planning consideration. But Councillor Ward, did you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you're all aware that it's taken a considerable length of time to arrange some planning training. And thanks very much to the assistant to the town clerk for persevering in trying to secure some for us. I'm hoping that they will include in the session what the borough expects from us as a parish council. Because at times I feel that we're being asked to be more expert than the experts, but we don't have all the information that is available to the planning officers, and if it goes to the borough's Development Management Committee later on. So I think we have indicated there's a need for this, and I really do hope that as many of you as possible, whether or not you're involved in the committee at the moment, if you're not involved now, you might be later on in the year, please do come. So very strongly felt request that you attend it. It's 6 o'clock. It probably won't go on very long, do you know?
I think it's probably about an hour and a half.
An hour and a half. And then if you're really gripped, our plans meeting will follow that.
Can I also say that if the town clerk and the assistant to town clerk, and for that matter the chair of plans, haven't picked up on PIP as yet, that is now effectively with us, and it does have a material impact on some applications that come before the parishes and town councils, in as much as the response time has been drastically cut. 14 days is now the limit on a response on a PIP application. I won't bore you by going into the details of what a PIP application is tonight, but it will cause a lot of grief for an awful lot of parish councils being able to get a response back within the timescale.
Can I just go around and ask who's going to be?
Yep.
Thank you. We've had a response from Councillor Johnson, so thank you very much. Can I just go round and ask the other members whether or not they'll be attending the training? Councillor Squire.
I'm planning to attend the training.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon?
I'm not sure at the moment.
If you could let the assistant know before the end of the week, that would be appreciated. Councillor Whitcomb? Councillor Saunders? Councillor Mrs Crawford?
Did you say 29th of May?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I can't.
Councillor Williamson? 6 o'clock. Councillor Benning?
Yeah.
Councillor Palfrey? Councillor Mrs Roberts? Councillor Ward?
Yes.
And Councillor Saunders?
Can't remember where I am, to be honest.
Thank you all very much.
I don't know, just to follow up what I just said on... Sorry?
If you had a paper diary, you could look it up straight away.
If your skin was as dry as mine, you'd know how difficult it is turning pages. But I just want to go back and re-emphasise this PIP process which the government has introduced, and it is actually no, I won't be here on the 29th. I'll be somewhere else altogether. It obviously will have an impact where, you know, I don't know if you, I can't remember if anybody here came to the presentation that was held at the...
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so obviously Council Ward's aware of it, but it does have a material impact on timescales, which is the particular issue. It's a new process, streamlined process for getting, it's called planning in principle, and it's a new process for getting things through the system more quickly, or that's what the government is hoping will do, and hopefully with less opposition. We had quite a debate about it at the Borough Council planning meeting this morning, and it's, you know, it has a whole raft of things in there which as yet we have to unpick, and as yet the guidance which is supposed to be coming out of government is not with us, even though the PIP process is about to commence. But if anybody's bored one evening and has got nothing else to do, if you Google something like planning in principle, permission in principle, permission in principle, you may find it exciting reading. Right, I think that's dealt with service reports. Item 10 is the report of the Assistant Town Clerk. We've dealt with Whitchurch Down Consultative Group. There were some issues raised. I've already mentioned the fact that the gorse cutting has been delayed simply because of the damage it would do, but it will get done. The other issue of relevance on there, I think, was the pimple and what, if anything, can be done. And at the moment, I'm trying to find it on the minutes. Is it not on the minutes?
No, it's there.
We had quite a long discussion on it.
Third paragraph, page 2.
Right. The difficulty is the registered landowner lives in America, seems to have very little interest in doing very much about it. The Borough Council could issue a notice, and if that notice wasn't complied with by the owner, the Borough Council could have the works carried out and recharge the owner. Whether they'd be successful in getting the money back remains to be seen. But there were a number of issues, I think, that were raised because the pimple is the building itself is deteriorating quite badly. What became clear during the course of the discussion, and I'm going to need to go to the General Manager because he's probably retained the information, but you may be aware that underneath the pimple is what was a reservoir and is now an empty concrete shell, but it is a substantial empty concrete shell, and I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it was something like 40 feet by
40 by 40 by 11 deep.
So 40 feet by 40 feet by 11 feet tall. So it's a very large concrete shell. So there was some discussion as to whether this council should consider trying to buy back the pimple, because it used to be in council ownership before the forerunner of the modern water authority, when it was North Devon Water Board, it would have been in those days, I think, when they took possession of it, constructed the reservoir, and with the pumping station building on top. But it's now gone through it's in the second private ownership at the moment. But if the council were to look at trying to buying it off the owner, not only would we have responsibility for the building above ground, but we would obviously have responsibility for the reservoir below ground. And it would take rather a lot of concrete to fill that in, I suspect, if we decided to do it. I can't off the top of my head work out how many cubic metres it would be, but it would be quite a lot. And obviously, over a period of time, clearly it would deteriorate and potentially become a hazard and a risk. I don't think it would do so in my lifetime, although it has been there for quite some time now. So I think there's more to be done on that, but I think everyone at the Whitchurch Down Committee was agreed that it is of historical interest, and it is currently in a pretty poor state. And really we would like to do something about it, but as I say, it is difficult because the current registered owner lives in America. I think to my knowledge, doesn't have any particular connections to this part of the globe, and doesn't seem to be responding to requests at their last known address to do something about it, to put it in good order, whatever. But I don't know if the clerk or the general manager was actually at the meeting, whether he wants to add any more to that.
No.
It's not particularly good news in a way, in the sense that it's very frustrating that we're getting criticised, and most of us, I think, have been approached at some stage by somebody complaining about it, and actually we're pretty nearly powerless to do anything about it. The only people that could actually issue a notice would be the borough council, and you know, it's a tricky one. Even if you issue a notice, people can ignore things like that, and then you're into complex legal issues. So I think we'll just try and work our way through it. But I don't know. At some point, it might be useful for the town council to look at seeing if they could repossess it, either by a CPO, which I don't think would be particularly sensible, because I don't think we'd actually have a case for it, but it's expensive, or we might make an offer for it. I think it changed hands for a fairly nominal figure, if I remember rightly, the last time, didn't it?
Yeah, it was offered 10,000, but I think it went for something like £1.
Yeah, it changed hands of, you know, a very small amount. Why this particular owner wanted to acquire it, I don't know. We could potentially acquire it back unless the individual has a particular reason for wanting to keep it in her ownership, but we would be taking on potentially quite a significant liability. If it was just the liability of the building above ground, then that's not too worrying, because it's, you know, it would be a liability but not a substantial one, but the below ground bits.
Yeah, it holds 100,000 gallons of water potentially, so it's quite significant. It's something that we can continue to monitor when we do our inspections up on Whitchurch Down. We can monitor if there's any further deterioration, and then report back to council if needs be.
Okay, Councillor Squire first, please.
I hadn't been aware of the discussion at the Commoners Association, but I do concur that the issue needs to be dealt with, because most of the public presume that the town council own that property and are letting it get into disrepair. So some form of either public statement, at least, to correct that information, or some tentative step towards remedying it, I think needs to be considered.
It is quite frustrating, as I say. It was in the it would have been the Urban District Council, I guess, in those days, wouldn't it? It was in the ownership of them. Yeah. North Devon Water Board, as it was, took over ownership of it. That transferred to South West Water. It then transferred into private ownership, and since then it's been sold on again to the current owner. So, you know, it is frustrating that we can't get there. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mayor. It was a question of whether there's any conceivable use for the subterranean part of the structure. I don't know, underground car park, water storage for the golf club, just, I don't know. Is there any conceivable use?
There are plenty of potential uses. One could turn it into a nightclub. It could be used, as you say, for storage of some sort. I mean, there are all sorts of things that one could conceive. The cost of that might be significant. The cost of the conversion and the alterations might be significant. But yes, I mean, potentially there are things that could be done.
I suppose, just as a supplementary, if I may, then we'd need a surveyor's report before we even entertained
we would certainly need that.
Any further with the notion of making an offer for it.
I mean, it would be an ideal place for local bands to practice in, presumably, but, you know.
Yes.
I don't know, but I think it's something that I think we need, probably as a town council, we probably need to keep some pressure on the borough council at the moment to ensure that their historic buildings officer, Graham Lawrence, puts pressure on the owner to get something done to put the above ground into respectable condition. And at the same time, we might, as a council, we might wish to pursue the avenue, Clark's going to scream in a minute, I think, but we might wish to pursue the avenue of approaching the current owner to see if there would be a possibility of buying it. If there was a possibility of purchasing it, then we need to look at what we're taking on in terms of the liability into the future. I don't know what people feel about that, whether you would feel you would want to go down the route of trying to buy it back. Councillor Wickham?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. I do think we need to do something because we're going to get the blame for it if not.
Well, members, would you like the... He's going to try and frustrate what I was about to say. Go on then.
I'm sure you'll say it anyway, sir. I think we, as the Mayor has intimated, I think we need to be very clear here. The landowner for listed structures has got responsibility. The local planning authority, in conjunction with Historic England, has got specific statutory responsibilities in relation to enforcing the requirements so far as they relate to listed buildings. We are not a party to that. It is a matter for the Borough Council as the planning authority to undertake such actions as are necessary to ensure that listed buildings do not fall into disrepair or become unsafe. That is a matter for them, it is not a matter for us. If the council at some time in the future chose to acquire the premises, bearing in mind the liabilities that go with them, I would remind you that we have already got a situation where our general reserve is a third of the level that it needs to be, where our capital reserve is currently unfunded to the tune of £500,000. We're not in a position to acquire liabilities, even if you acquire them at a peppercorn rate, if you're then going to have to make them safe and undertake the works. If it comes onto the market, I think that's a very different matter. But I think there's a difficulty here, which is that we could, in effect, be stepping in to absolve the Borough Council of its responsibilities by virtue of taking it on and taking on a liability. It really is their responsibility. That's why they're the local planning authority at this stage.
It's not actually the Borough Council's responsibility. They are responsible for trying to ensure that any listed building is kept in a reasonable order, but all they're required to do, generally speaking, is to ensure that it's watertight, weatherproof, nothing else. So they're not required to, I mean, even the owner wouldn't, in this instance, it's not a grade 2 star or grade 1, so even the owner wouldn't be required to do anything other than that it was, you know, the roof was weatherproofed, that's all. Councillor Vanny.
In respect to that, is there any possible chance that we can contact these people that they could actually donate it to us, and we will put them a lovely plaque on it saying donated by so-and-so from America? Everybody's going to be buying it.
Well, they might well be. The difficulty with what we've got, the bridge, if you want to go down that road to bring it back into council ownership, that's fine, but what we then need to do is establish what the liabilities would be. I don't think the liability initially with the building is relatively small amounts of money, but there is an ongoing liability undoubtedly with both the building and particularly with the reservoir underneath. But you know, if members want to do that, and perhaps you want to have a think about it, if somebody feels that's what they want to do, they could bring a proposal back to the next council meeting. You know, bring a proposal forward for the agenda so that people can actually have time to think about it. Just leave that with you, I think, because it, you know, it may be something we would want to do. Historically, it was part of the town, and it sits on land that we own, basically. So we might want to. Anybody got a blood pressure meter in the office anywhere? No? Right. Witchesdown Common Areas. Anything else on that? Anybody wants to raise? Tavistock Museum's annual report. Anything on that? Anybody wants to raise? Yes, Councillor Benny.
Going back to what we were saying earlier on about Witchesdown, I did go up there last weekend and I noticed people once again have been joyriding on it. It would be very helpful if people keep their eyes open and see if they can catch somebody doing it.
Yeah. The important thing with that is you get a registration number. If they've got one, unfortunately for motorbikes they very often don't have any number plates on. You need a registration number, you need date and time, and if possible you're never going to get their names and addresses out of them, I suspect, but you might risk taking a photograph, but you might get punched if you do. But you know, it's a prayer I deal with as a voluntary warden on the moor all the time, but in order to do something you have to have every fact about who was what, and ideally you need to be able to identify who was the driver of the vehicle. But pass. So if we move on then to Southern Link, anything from that anybody wants to raise? No. So if we then move on to the Tavistock Heritage update, I think you've all been made aware that Martin Searle is leaving. He's acquired alternative. No?
No, that was what I was going to use this as an opportunity for.
Right, I thought most people would have picked it up from correspondence, so I'm the only one. Martin Searle has got a job much nearer to his home, which is much more suitable for him. He is leaving and will have left on or before the 6th of July. I say on or before because at the moment I don't think we're clear exactly how much leave he's got left to take, because we haven't looked at it. Once we know that, we'll know what his last working day will be. I said the 6th of July, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, so maybe the clerk just wants to amplify on that and talk about what may or may not happen thereafter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you'll appreciate, Martin is one of the sort of key workers, if you like, within the organisation because of the nature of the role that he occupies. The contract has only approximately 16 months left to run, and obviously there would need to be an appointment process for a successor. We have a monitor meeting with Heritage Lottery Fund taking place this Thursday, and what we're going to do is have a discussion with them around what options there are available to us at this stage of the programme, and whether that's going to be a direct recruitment, a combination of direct recruitment and consultancy, or some form of consultancy and reallocation within the organisation. I think we'll need to look at what the options are and how those will work. But clearly, in terms of a part-time job and a contract which at most is going to last 12 to 14 months going forwards in a very specialist area, that might be challenging to look to recruit at this stage. So we're looking at all the options, and we're hoping that we can reach agreement with Heritage Lottery Fund around what we can do going forwards, and we'll keep you posted.
Any questions? No? A little bit of advertising then. If any of you know of anyone who might be suitable, who might be interested in a relatively short contract working part-time, then I'm sure we would be very pleased to have that information, because I suspect it won't be an easy post to fill, given that it is part-time and that it is short-term. Or fixed-term, I suppose, is probably more appropriate. Okay, moving on to item F then, the Guildhall Gateway Centre. Oral report from the clerk, I guess.
Yep. And again, the meeting with the monitor for the THI is also the same, or there will be a meeting on the same day in relation to the Guildhall. In terms of the agreement on the lease and service level agreement, we are still awaiting for Tavistock Heritage Trust to appoint their solicitors, and as soon as they've appointed those solicitors, we will look to move on that in order that we can then submit the permission to start to Heritage Lottery Fund. Effectively, at this moment, we have accepted the grant, but we then also have to do a permission to start form. So the order of play is reach the agreement with Tavistock Heritage Trust, submit the permission to start form, and then we're in a position whereby we can actually start to take the project forward and to draw down monies in accordance with the project programme.
Thank you. And could you note my personal interest as a member of Tavistock Heritage Trust, which I should have declared at the start of the meeting, didn't think about it. I haven't actually been to a meeting of theirs recently, so I don't know how they're getting on with the appointment of their solicitors, but clearly, presumably they're making some progress. Okay, anything else on that? Next one, right. Any updates? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Fort Street Almshouse meeting. Pleased to say that they are relatively healthy, or notwithstanding repairs which are always ongoing. However, I told them that Councillor Smith had resigned, and they would like it to be known that they were thankful for Councillor Smith's involvement with the almshouses, wished him well in the future, and to pass on the best regards for him. I also informed them that we would duly announce another councillor to take Mr. Smith's place.
Thank you for that. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two things. Destination Oakhampton, the weekly Sunday service, which is the train that goes from Oakhampton to Exeter, and obviously you can make a connection beyond, will be up and running from this coming Sunday. Secondly, Kingdom House Community Association, I did mention it at the pre-meeting last week, but they have been successful in their application to the Greater Dartmoor Leaf Fund, and the grant from them will allow them to complete phase 1 of the development of the building, which is to make the outside of the building watertight and improve the general appearance of the building. One small problem with that, in that the grant will be paid after the work has been done and been paid. So I think we're looking at our cash flow very carefully there. There might be some issues with that, but I'll report back as and when I know that. Thank you.
Thank you. As your representative for the DNPA Forum, there is a meeting due in a few weeks' time, and organisations are being solicited as of today if there are any items that you wish to see on the agenda for that meeting. So if the clerk or anyone else has any, if you let me know, I will pass them on to Ali Harris. Anyone else want to report back on an external body? No? No one with any exoskeletons in the cupboard? No? Okay. Item 11 then, to receive communications submitted by the Mayor. I have nothing. Item 12, urgent matters. As far as I know, I have nothing. Item 13, good night, Lindsay. Sorry you had to go out earlier on. It was just that we needed to get the solicitor in and saving you taxpayers' money. Oh, you had a good old gossip out there anyway, did you? No doubt. Caught up on it. Yeah. All right. No. That's all right.